Hey guys, it's War Turtle, and I'm just going to help explain Nerf a little bit better for our team. So initially, when Game of War and Mobile Strike started, there was no Nerf, which this resulted in situations where players were defending their bases with huge amounts of low-tier troops, being Tier 1 and Tier 2 troops, which kept their base power relatively low, but and they could withhold solo attacks and rallies even from the strongest players. And the players and the game makers were not happy with this concept, so Nerf was introduced. The idea of Nerf is that players with huge amounts of Tier 1 and Tier 2 troops and relatively few higher tier troops would get a severe penalty when it came to combat. So if the average troop power per troop, which is the sum of all the power of all the troops divided by the sum of the troops, is less than or equal to 10, which is the Nerf power limit, you were considered nerfed. So when it came down to it, we had to have a calculation. The Nerf calculation is applicable to all troops involved in combat. This applies to armies of troops that are defending a base, so the troops that are in your base. Typically, for trap accounts, you would want to have a low power, in which case is preferred, and using low tier troops rather than high tier, because the low tier troops give you better defense and higher numbers related to your power. Realizing that you need to be careful by being close to the Nerf limit, but not over it. The Nerf limit is calculated based on the troops and traps in your base. If you are normally close to the limit, having higher tier troops out of your base, which is like when you are reinforcing or joining a rally, can lower your average power and put you over that limit, so you have to be pretty careful. If you're using Tier 3 or higher troops, Nerf does not apply to you at all, because these troop types have a power that is higher than 10 per troop. If you're only using Tier 4 and Tier 2 troops, you can have 13 times as many Tier 2 troops as your Tier 4 troops. This is considering infantry, tactical, and armored vehicles, not artillery. If you only have Tier 3 and Tier 2 troops, you can have 7 times as many Tier 2 troops as Tier 3 troops. Again, this is only considering infantry, tactical, and armored vehicles. So if you have Tier 4 and Tier 1 troops, looking over here, I'll show you. So we have Tier 4 and Tier 1. You can have 3.25 times as many Tier 1 troops as Tier 4 troops. Again, this is with infantry, tactical, and armored vehicles only. So let's have a look over here. If you have Tier 3 troops and Tier 1 troops, using artillery, you can have 3.25 times more Tier 1s than Tier 3s. And this is including artillery. So to use this chart here, we're picking our troop. What is our high tier troop? We're going to pick a high tier troop. Let's say tier 10. So let's come over here to this random T10. You can have 8.875 times more tier 1s than tier 10s. So if you have 10 tier 10s, you can have what? 80 tier 1s. So I don't have an actual calculator on hand, but you can do the math that way. The numbers are going to get bigger, obviously, as we are in the KTTT, MTTT troop range, but it gives you a general idea of how many troops you can have per high tier troop. So if you're going to run tier 1s and you're going to run tier 2s, this is how you're going to do it. The actual situations, you will have a mixture of troops, and in this case, it can be a little bit more difficult or easy to calculate it. As we use many different high tier troops, all these ratios keep increasing, which means that you can have even more tier 1s. So the easiest way, in my opinion, to calculate your NERF is to do it this way. Add up your total amount of troop power and your total amount of trap power and divide it by your overall power. If that number is greater than 10, you are not nerfed. And if it is less than 10, you're nerfed. So you can use this chart, or you can do it the other way too, but you should have some kind of ratio to help you figure it out, and that's what this chart here is for. This chart is to help you come up with a ratio so that you know that you're not nerfing your base.